Hello and welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Big Italy 42, joined here by Christopher Ruckus at Space Jam 23 DFS. We're talking about tonight's slate, as usual on a Thursday, small slate, just 6 games. We've got some interesting pitchers, but no aces on the mound. Nobody that you just necessarily feel great about. I mean, maybe some young guys that we consider to be aces or soon to be aces. So a couple guys I like tonight, but no one that you love as a slam dunk. As you know, one of my favorite young pitchers in the game, Colin McHugh, coming in against the Angels at $8,400 tonight. You know I'm a big fan of his. He's got a 20.2% strikeout rate. It's been kind of slowing down since that big game he had against Oakland. He doesn't walk a lot of batters, under 5%. Ground ball rate of just over 50%. He's been great against lefties and pretty solid against righties as well. So I think he's the guy I'm going to be going to a lot. And if it's not him, it's going to be Chris Archer against Texas. We know how good he's been this year. Struggled in his last game at Baltimore, but outside of that, he's been just incredible this year. So are these the top guys you're looking at too, or are you looking at some others down lower?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are probably going to be your top 2 guys, and they're also going to be your highest owned guys. I mean, if I'm looking for a pivot, I'm definitely pivoting down to A.J. Burnett. Super cheap, 7.1K for Burnett is a steal. Also got to remember, thing with Votto last night, something to look for. If he does get suspended, I know we talked about it earlier, probably going to appeal it. But, something to be aware of if Burnett's out or if Joey Votto's out of the lineup. Only concern with Burnett tonight is his walk rate against this Reds lineup. That's my only really concern. He's got a pretty good ground ball rate versus this lineup. Overall, second best of the day, only second to Tim Hudson, who obviously we know doesn't really have much upside. I think with a GPP play, I'm rolling Burnett, taking the savings, and pivoting off of those top 2 that you said.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. Like you said, Burnett keeps the ball on the ground. He's solid against lefties and righties, worse against lefties throughout his career, but he's held him in check so far this year, 252 WOBA. So those are my main targets. Also, a guy you can look at in tournaments against a Houston team that does strike out a lot, especially if George Springer's not in the lineup still, is Hector Santiago at $7,200. We know that Houston has a ton of power against lefties. They could definitely put some runs on the board, but they could also strike out a ton. And this is a guy he's a good pitcher. I mean, he gave up 9 hits in his last game, but his other starts this season, only 4, 3, 4, 6, and 4 or 5 hits. So he struggles with walks at times. As we saw, he walked 6 guys against Texas. But if he keeps that under control, then I think he could be in for a nice night in GPP tonight. Outside of that, nobody else I'm really looking at. Anthony DeSclafani's been pretty good so far this season. He's been really good against righties, which could fare well tonight against this Pittsburgh lineup, who was just mowed down by Mike Leake. And he did face him once this season, went 6 innings, 6 Ks, got 10 fantasy points on FanDuel, so he was adequate. But at $7,500, I feel like he's a little bit pricey there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one.
All right, let's move on here to catcher, where no Stephen Vogt for me to talk about today, so it seems so barren. But if we're looking at Evan Gattis going up against the lefty and Hector Santiago, you got to like his chances. He's got huge, massive power upside, as we know. He's got 5 homers in his last 9 games, 2 hits again last night. So I think he's got to be your high upside play. And then, of course, you're going to be looking at a guy like Buster Posey as well, going against Darren Herron. Posey hasn't really gotten it going the way we expect, but he's still one of the better hitting catchers in the game. And, now he gets an average righty in Dan Herron tonight, so I don't mind him either. Is there anybody else you're looking at here cheaper, or these are guys you're looking at, or are you looking towards like a Derek Norris, even though he's facing a righty?
You got it. You got it. So I think Derek Norris is in a nice spot tonight. He's significantly cheaper. With people probably paying up for pitchers, Gaddis is going to be high owned. Save some money there. If you're looking to pivot off Gaddis for GPPs, I'm probably pivoting to Brian McCann against Tillman tonight. He does have some upside, 186 ISO. Some upside, obviously not the upside that Gaddis has, but I think if you're looking for a pivot, I think he's a fine pivot. Catcher's kind of barren tonight. I get a punt, but also we don't have Clayton Kershaw, King Felix, Scherzer. We don't have those guys on the mound. So I don't know if a punt is warranted at a position tonight. More of a balanced strategy.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, all the pitchers are under 9K tonight, so easy to fit guys in. FanDuel's pricing's pretty soft right now, too, so you should be able to get anyone you want. Only reason you should be needing to punt a position is if you're going expensive pitcher and some elite bats, but I'm with you there. I'm sticking around those top guys. Maybe some value emerges. Caleb Joseph batted 6 yesterday, so I don't mind him if he goes 6. But outside of that, I'm not reaching too deep. I don't think that there's much reason to do that. All right, moving over to first base. We talked about Joey Votto. Maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. You assume he's probably going to appeal his suspension. Obviously, the Reds are no strangers to blow-ups, and I'm sure he's not going to get discipline from the team, especially after what Brian Price did a few weeks ago with the media. So Joey Votto at $4,000, if he's in the lineup, I love him tonight. I think he makes for the safest option up top. $1,100 cheaper than Paul Goldschmidt, who's going against Odres Spain, who's a fine pitcher but a contact pitcher. So, I mean, certainly Paul Goldschmidt is in play for me, but at $1,100 cheaper, I'd rather go Joey Votto, or maybe go down to some of these other bats here where you've got Mark Teixeira against Chris Tillman, who was better in his last start but has been bad all season. Obviously, Teixeira, switch hitter, 10 homers on the year. $3,700 makes him one of my favorite tournament plays.
Yeah, 3,700 is a good price for him. My favorite tournament play, just look one up, is Chris Davis against Nathan Eovaldi. I think he's in a fantastic spot. I actually don't think anyone displays the power upside of him today. Looking at this now, fly ball rate 44%, home run to fly ball rate of 28, ISO of 289. I mean, the guy mashes, absolutely mashes. So I love him as a tournament pivot. I mean, very rarely. Actually, you look at first base, it's not, you don't have your Edwin Encarnacion's, David Ortiz's, you don't have those guys at first tonight. You got Votto, Goldschmidt, and then like a slew of guys that you consider on big slates, but you typically never play. So I love Chris Davis tonight. I think he's an elite option. I think he gives you a ton of upside. I don't mind his floor. I don't mind his price. Obviously, if you're going to take Votto's the best player at first, but if you're pivoting, my number 2 is Chris Davis.
Yeah, I'm with you there. There's a couple cheap guys I don't mind here. Brandon Belt's the guy at $2,900 who's priced. I mean, he hasn't been off to a great start, but for talent level, I think he's priced too low against Dan Herron. You look at his last couple games, he has 2.5, 3.25, and then 2 5.75 games over his last 4. Starting to heat up. He's only $2,900. I like him. Chris Carter, if you want some home run upside at $2,800, is interesting. And if you want just a cheap cash game play, James Loney against a bad righty is always in play for me at $2,600.
Yeah.
All right, moving on here to second base where, once again, we get Jose Altuve against a lefty, and this time at a little bit of a discount. He's 0 for his last 7, hasn't had a hit in 2 games, so that right there tells you he's too good of a hitter to keep this up for too long. I love Jose Altuve at $4,800, and he's a lot cheaper than he has been recently. Of course, D. Gordon here against the slow delivery of the old man, Tim Hudson. Gotta like his perspective tonight. And, I mean, the guy's just continuing to crush the ball. I mean, he's getting on base. He's stealing bases. It's hard to pass up D. Gordon tonight at $3,800, especially in your cash games.
Cash games, yes, 100%. GPPs, pivot down about $1,100. You're going to see this guy named Neil Skywalker. Second base, 2.7K. ISO 2.207, WOBA 358. D. Scalfini's young. He's good. I love Neil Walker as my GPP play. Obviously, D. Gordon and Altuve's got some upside. But if you want to pivot off of those two guys, I think I'm pivoting down to Neil Walker.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. And, I mean, there's some other guys. Logan Forsythe batted second last night. So if he gets that spot again, I think he makes for a fine play at $2,500 if you're paying down. Looking all the way down at the bottom, Johnny Giavotella is the only other one I'd be looking at. He's batted 6th. He's batted 2nd. Should be batting around 6, I would assume, again tonight. Had himself a fine season. He's bare minimum price. So I don't mind going down that way if you just need to save some money. Outside of that, Jimmy Paredes was batting 2nd again. He gets Nathan Eovaldi tonight. So if that offense gets it going, you got to think he's going to be a big part of it at $3K as well.
Yeah, completely agree with you.
All right, moving on to third base where not a lot of guys you just go out of your way to feel great about here tonight. You've got Adrian Beltre in a tough matchup against Chris Archer. He's finally starting to hit the ball better, but like I said, tough matchup against Archer, so he makes for a really good tournament play. Todd Frazier, as we know, has tons of power against lefties and righties. He's got 9 homers on the season. He's also the most expensive pitcher or hitter at third base tonight. But then you got Manny Machado, who is just putting up big numbers now. After that bad start to the season, 3,500. I like him against Eovaldi tonight.
I do too. I think what he stole 2 bags last night. He was the only person he was like DeGrom's kryptonite last night.
Yep.
Literally, he's the only person that even could touch DeGrom. He got on base, stole I mean, he's the only reason DeGrom didn't have a shutout. Machado was super aggressive last night. I don't know if you saw the game, but super aggressive. 3.5K, it just seems like a lot for him. But looking at the slate, there's not a whole hell of a lot that I'm liking. I think, this is weird for me to say, and I'm just double checking some price tags. Well, Alvarez isn't a third baseman on FanDuel.
First base. Yep.
He is first base on FanDuel.
Yep.
Alex Rodriguez against Chris Tillman. I don't think he's in a bad spot at 3.2K. Puts a ball in play. I don't like Chris Tillman. I know you said this earlier. He is playing at home tonight. I like, if I had to pick my dong of the night for third base, I think I'm going straight to A-Rod.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you there. I mean, he's hitting the ball really well this year.
He's got the highest ISO, I guess an adjusted ISO, a stat that I do of any player at third base tonight at 267. Yeah, I think A-Rod is my play. And I think for GPPs, he's going to be low owned, and I actually think he's the best play there. I think Evan Longoria is going to be super high owned because of last night. I think he's the absolute epitome of FADE, not talking about the haircut. So skip out on Longo. I mean, people are going to be all over him. Both of those home runs were not towering. Pivot off of him, fade, whatever you want to call it. I take A-Rod over Longo 100% of the time.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think Longo makes for a fine cash game play because everyone will be on him. If nothing else, you're going to kind of negate that. Seems like he's really seeing the ball well now and getting on base, walking. Finally, the 2 homers, showing that power stroke. But I'm with you. He'll be a popular play in tournaments. So, I don't blame you if you want to avoid him there. Looking down cheap, Yangervis Solarte, if he's batting second, even fifth in the lineup, hasn't been particularly great recently, but the guy's got upside, and he's absolute minimum salary. So, I mean, as far as punts go, that's got to be one of the better ones on the slate tonight.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to shortstop, where I wish we didn't have to move on to shortstop because it is damn ugly over here at shortstop. Your most expensive healthy player tonight is Elvis Andrus, who is quietly having an okay season. He's getting on base. He's starting to turn things around as Texas is. As you and I were talking yesterday, Texas starting to score some runs that ends up being a nice stack a lot of nights. He's kind of starting to get it going. Aiden Hechavarria is $2,700. He's a guy that's been getting on base, but he usually bats 7th or 8th, which kind of takes him out of consideration for me. So with that being said, I mean, I'm looking at guys like Asdrubal Cabrera. If he gets an okay lineup spot at $2,400, reluctantly, he's not that good of a hitter, but he's cheap. I mean, where are you looking at shortstop? Because I don't want to play any of these guys, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm calling FanDuel. I'm going to see if I can't do like a 2-for-1. I'll take $500 less in salary, and I can throw anybody else at shortstop that I want tonight. I'll even take maybe $1,000. But
pay double entry.
Double entry. Like, I don't want to play shortstops, which makes me please believe, Big Italy, that Space Jam is playing Marwin Gonzalez, min salary, 2.2K, end of story. I don't like anybody. I don't care. I'm not playing any of these players, honestly. I'm just not playing them. Hechavarria bats so low in the order. Elvis Andrus, I mean, maybe that's it. But I'm probably Marwin, and I'll probably put Marwin in first, see what happens around it, and then be done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you there. And I think Eric Ibar is a fine play at $2,300 if you're not playing McHugh. But I'll have plenty of McHugh. So, yeah, it looks like punt. Punt is the way to go at shortstop, as is the norm recently because it's been bad. All right, moving on here to the outfield. As usual, most expensive player on the night is Mike Trout, but he does get Colin McHugh tonight. So I won't have a lot of him because I'll have Colin McHugh. And think about it this way. A 6-game slate. Mike Trout is one of those names that everybody knows. So he's going to be a popular play in tournaments just because it's hard to spend your salary tonight. And he's going to be littered through lots of tournament lineups. So just keep that in mind. Giancarlo Stanton, certainly locked in right now. The guy's still mashing the ball. It's up to 27 RBIs on the season quietly. He's the guy that nobody's talking about. Everybody's talking about Nelson Cruz and Hanley Ramirez, and he's got more RBIs than both of these guys. So not hitting for a great average, but against a very hittable righty and Tim Hudson, I think he's a great play. And Jacoby Ellsbury makes for my favorite play up top in the outfield. The guy can do it all. He gets on, he steals bases, he scores runs. Hasn't really shown any power this year, but we know he has some. So, I mean, at $4,500 against one of the worst pitchers on the board so far this season, I'm loving some Jacoby Ellsbury.
Yeah, love Jacoby. If you need a punt option, just go punt Kevin Kiermaier 2.2K if he's leading off, batting second. Don't think about it. End of story. 224 ISO, 361 WOBA. End of story. Done. Not going to beat that one to a horse. I'm pretty sure there's no player we've talked about more than Kevin Kiermaier just because of our homer and the Red Sox hat over here. So,
It's not a Red Sox hat.
Huh?
It's not a Red Sox hat.
What is it?
It's a baseball team I coached. I just like the hat. That's all it is.
Oh.
It looks like a Red Sox.
It looks just like a Red Sox hat. So I guess I have to make a national apology to
I love Kevin Kiermaier because he's great. That's why I love Kevin Kiermaier.
I mean, you've put me on to Kevin Kiermaier so much. Thank you. But, tonight he's number one punt, 2.2K. But like I said, I don't think you need to punt all these options. Can we have these players like on a full game slate with Kershaw pitching?
Yep.
Can I get that? But, if I'm pivoting down, not pivoting, I guess, that medium price range, Matt Kemp, Justin Upton, both have fun. Actually, where is Justin Upton's price? 4.2K. Upton, Kemp, both love both of those guys. If you need some upside, Chris Carter against Santiago. And then finally, I think one of the most interesting plays of the night, no one's going to be on, is Shin Soo Choo against Chris Archer. That is going to be my GPP play of the night. If you didn't know this yet, I'm fading Chris Archer tonight. And I just think he's going to be super high owned GPPs. Cash games, probably safe to play because if he does go off, everyone's going to have him. And, outfield, it's tough. Giancarlo Stanton against Tim Hudson. Tim Hudson doesn't throw a ball that goes above a hitter's ankles and gets called for strikes. So he's tough, and maybe that's really it. I mean, Mike Trout's obviously your top option, but he's up against McHugh. It's a give or take.
Yeah, a couple guys I'll throw out. Marlon Byrd, all of a sudden, since he's been in the two-hole, has been on fire. 6 hits in the last 3 games, including 3 home runs. Even stole a base and a double steal last night. So, I mean, you got to consider him in tournaments at 2,700. And a guy who's got 3 home runs in the last 2 nights, Carlos Peguero at 2,400, I think makes for an interesting play. And then one more guy I want to throw out there, if you're going to go minimum salary, leading off against Nathan Eovaldi is Alejandro De Aza. Absolute minimum salary. Like we said, you don't need minimum salary guys, but I think that a good way to go tonight would be leaving some money on the table because people aren't going to see that coming. I mean, that's the way to differentiate yourself on a short slate. And also, I have to mention David Peralta. He'll be back in the lineup here against a righty, of course. He started one of the 2 games yesterday, but 3K. I like him a lot tonight against Odrisamer Spain.
Yeah, so I actually was going to say Peralta, but I didn't know if he was back tonight or not.
Yeah, he should be. He better be in the lineup tonight. But all right, that's going to wrap things up for us here. Thanks for hanging out with us. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Lots of great content for tonight's slate at dailyfantasycafe.com. We'll see you tomorrow.